Well, sitting here in Rodney Bay Lagoon, St Lucia, it's very hard for me to remember when I was back in UK waters what I thought blue water cruising was going to be like. What sort of boat did I need? What sort of equipment did I need? Was I a good enough sailor to be able to do it? In fact, I think anyone with a little bit of experience and a good heavy boat, a well-constructed solid boat, can do this easily. It's not a problem. My 1979 Moody 36 Bambola cat. It's basically absolutely standard. I've made a few changes on deck, added some equipment. Well, I'll show you. Up here, I've added these granny bars. Let's have a look at those. These are the granny bars, one on either side of the mast. They enable me to come up here on deck when I'm putting the main up or reefing or having to do any work here at the mast, and have something to lean back and secure myself to, in addition to the safety harness that I normally wear. They were one of the first things I installed on deck in Bambola when I bought her, and I think they're one of the most important items of safety equipment I've got. I don't actually like in-mast mainsail furling. I believe that one day it'll jam up, and the day it jams up it'll be blowing like stink and you won't be able to get it down. I didn't even like the roller reefing that was originally on it, so I've converted her to slab reefing. She's got 3 deep slabs in her, and I can come up here and I can throw a reef in her in 2 or 3 minutes with ease, and that's single-handed. This is the Bimini as it is in Anchorage, with its side curtains here, which roll down either side and at the back in order to keep you out of the sun. One of the most important things in being a blue water cruiser is to keep out of the sun. There's a lot of it about, and it can be very damaging. It also just gets too hot, quite honestly. So as soon as I'm in Anchorage, the Bimini is up like this, and it's shading the cockpit and making the biggest room in the boat comfortable and breezy and pleasant. But when I go sailing, I roll up the front half because I really am not enthusiastic about having large areas of canvas around when it might get all windy. But that rolls up very quickly, and it only takes a moment to it. Happens just like this. Although not a commercial design, this sort of Bimini has the advantage that a small area above the wheel can be left up in most conditions. This area is about 3 feet wide, and it stretches all the way across the cockpit so that it provides shade for the helmsman and the crew, particularly in the hot midday sun. Yep. A couple more ties, bit of tidying up, and that's it, it's ready to go. The other thing the Bimini does, which is very important, is it collects water. Water is always a big problem. It can be expensive, it's difficult to get hold of, it's difficult to get alongside to fill up in a lot of places. And I have 2 teats and God's own water maker just behind me. I've sewn and glued 2 plastic funnels into the aft part of the Bimini, and these tubes feed the rainwater into containers on deck or directly into the water tank. The entire Bimini slopes slightly aft. This is the wind self-steering gear, the hydrovane. You get her steering on the course you want her to go, you get the sails set so that she's properly balanced, you then set up the hydrovane so the vane is upright, and as she comes off the wind, as she changes direction, the vane leans over to one side or to the other side, and that turns the little baby rudder on the stern here, and that brings Bambola back up into her true course relative to the wind. The wonderful thing about the hydrovane is that the windier it gets, the worse the conditions get, the better it works. The stronger the wind is, therefore the more pressure it exerts on the vane here, and the more pressure that exerts on the rudder, and the quicker she comes back onto the course and the steadier course you steer. If you're going to cross oceans, this is an absolutely essential piece of kit. My Air Marine wind generator produces 2 amps in 10 knots and up to 40 amps in 30 knots of wind. The Siemens solar panel produces 4 or 5 amps either side of noon, so between the two I can run my fridge and lights and only have to run the engine every 2 or 3 days to charge the batteries. On the goalposts are 2 Garmin GPS, a Navtex and a radar warning antenna, as well as a strobe light. There are 2 hawser holes leading to the chain locker. The bar anchor line has 100 meters of chain and 80 meters of road. The second anchor line has 5 metres of chain and 80 metres of rode. My favourite anchor is the Simpson-Lawrence CQR, my anchor of choice. Next in line is this Fortress anchor, which is very impressive, and it's easy to handle and is the one I use first when a second anchor is needed, either as a kedge or as a second bar anchor. It's dropped with either its own chain and warp as a kedge or with the heavier chain and warp from the bows. It has superb holding powers. My fisherman's anchor is excellent and seldom fails to dig in and hold well. I wouldn't be without it, particularly with rocky bottoms. It is actually easier to launch and recover than it appears. The Bruce came with Bambola and I keep it in reserve. The manual Simpson-Lawrence anchor winch is fine until you have trouble making the pick dig in and have to relay several times. Then I would love to have an electric anchor winch. A second bow roller is essential, but this one wasn't man enough for the job and will have to be replaced by a beefier version. Shows how well the Fortress anchor was holding in that rough anchorage. Known in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean is the Austrian-flagged Jolly Swagman. Christian and Keris, how long have you actually been cruising?
I've been cruising for 3 and a bit years.
6 years.
You've been 6 years?
I've been 6 years.
And how's it been?
Lovely. That's really been lovely.
It's got better recently, no.
Yeah.
Where did you start?
It has changed a lot.
Yeah.
I started from the Baltic Sea and made my way down through Holland, Britain, from Britain across to Spain, Portugal, Atlantic coast, of course, all of it, into Gibraltar, into the Med, and around the Med for a few years, down to Canaries, Cape Verdes, and now here into the Caribbean. You're totally different.
And I started in America, and went up the east coast of America, and then back down and over to the Virgin Islands, and up and down the Caribbean island chain since.
So what are the longest passages you've done, Christian? Longest offshore passages?
The longest one was Cape Verdes to Barbados. That was 15 days. And what was the next one? 6 days. 6 days Cape Verdes. Canaries to Cape Verdes, yeah. So boring. Nothing really special. But then again, it was special because it was something I was really looking forward to for so many years and worked for a long time. So in the end, having reached it, having done it, it was something special again, yes. But the passage itself was nothing really special.
And for you, Keris, what was your longest offshore passage?
The 1,500 miles from Norfolk, Carolina over to the Virgin Islands. And after 3 days of apprehension and fear and waiting for everything to break, watching the winds pick up and then moderate, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was quite exhilarated by the whole thing.
How has the reality of cruising been compared to the dream you had before you originally set out?
There's more people. There's a lot more people doing it than I ever thought there would be. And that has its advantages, as I think
Younger people.
Younger people
how many
too.
young people are doing it.
And how many people do it on such a small budget too. And most seem happy. And of the people that I meet, it's the other cruisers that are the people that I'll remember more so than the people that I've met ashore. That's a big surprise to me. I thought it would be the people that I met, the local people on the islands, that would make a bigger impact. Caribbean, okay.
And tell me about boat. Tell me about Jolly Swagman. What sort of boat is she? Okay, I know she's a catamaran, but tell me a bit about her.
Jolly Swagman is a 37-foot Prout built, catamaran Prout built. That's the company. Which is the first question I always get from someone is, aren't you worried about capsizing? So, and what I've seen up till today, she's very strong. She's very, very strong, and I'm not worried anymore at all about capsizing.
I saw you had roller reefing on the headsail furling. What sort of reefing do you have on the main?
On the mainsail, it's that slab reefing.
And who goes up to the mast to reef?
Keris. Because I do the pulling. I'm the strong one around here, so Carriage goes up and it's not much to do, it's just something to hook in and the job is done. That means releasing the sail and getting it a little bit down. There is a little bit of pulling, but she's strong.
And what about anchoring? Now out here in the Caribbean and to some extent in the Mediterranean, you spend 90% of the time on anchor rather than in marinas. How is the anchoring situation with you?
We've got 3 anchors on board. We've got that famous and fancy CQR. We've got a Fortress anchor, lightweight one, only 8 kilos, but does a good job in sandy bottoms. And my favorite, which I do think is at the moment the best anchor in the world, it's the Bugle Anchor, which I had the opportunity to compare with my CQR for many times, and it has outperformed the CQR on many occasions, and I think that's one of the best anchors, if not the best, in the world at the moment.
Okay, so the Bugle Anchor is the flavour of the month, and when you're anchoring, Karis, what function do you perform? Do you throw it in or do you drive?
Drive.
She goes astern.
It's real difficult.
By side. No, well, it's not easy because it's not only the anchoring, it's also the picking up, and she does a good job in going forward with the boat, and it's not so easy with a lot of wind sometimes, and it does take a whole lot of strain off the anchor gear itself. We do have an electric anchor windlass, but still it takes a lot of strain off it.
What do you consider to be the most important items of equipment on the boat, the essential items?
Washing machine, GPS.
GPS, and how many GPSs do you have?
3. We've got 3 on board, but having said that, we still have a sextant, so...
And on the deck, wrapped up in a canvas bag, a big canvas bag, there seems to be a big lump tied on the afterdeck. Would you like to tell me about that? Do you want to walk over there and tell me about that package?
Okay. Yes, this is
Okay, that's good.
This is our moped. Which does bring a big variety into the cruising life.
Would you be kind enough to show us around your home? Show us where you live?
Of course.
You'd love to. Let's
have a
do
look.
it.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Bye.
Comfy. Okay, this is our living room. Sorry. Which is in the med. I mean, you really use it in the med because we've had something like 12 people sitting around here. Also out at sea, when we're on a longer passage, we use these bunks here for that person that's just off watch. Not to forget our moped garage. Because the table goes away and then the moped comes in here, and that's a very protected and nice place to put it. Good. Let's go and have a look at the navigational area. Well, I do emails and things like that down here, and all the navigational work. This is where I call my friends with a VHF radio, and this is the SSB, which we forgot to mention before is a very important gadget on board. GPS, one of the most important, if not the most important thing on board. This multi-instrument shows the wind direction and boat speed, depth. This is the radar and our second GPS. And the most important instrument on board, which is...
What I'm about to show you. Hidden in the heads is the washing machine. A domestic washing machine that uses very little water. Christian?
40 litres, it's not much.
To wash. And it's a vacuum pump toilet, which is quite favourable.
Show how much room we've got. Come on, Karis. Come on in, darling. Let's show our little kitchen.
Yeah. Little compact, but
Little compact kitchen.
Well, we have a double drainer and sink. We have electric running water and sea intake too, which is particularly useful on conservation of sweet water.
Okay, since all we have on board has to be stored too, we've got a beautiful storage room for
Toys.
my toys, for my spares and my polishing equipment and greasing equipment and so further and so on. So there's a lot of things that always have to be stored everywhere.
This is the second aft cabin, which has all the cushions to make a double bed as in the other one, but also stores our refrigerated items. Here we have a rather large fridge with two separate cooling freezer boxes on either side. Feeding from this refrigerator, we also have a small cool box which keeps vegetables and fruits rather well, and of course speck and sausage. It's an Austrian boat.
And since we need a lot of energy, we have to produce a lot of energy, and that's all on top of the boat, on deck. So let's have a look on deck. Yeah?
Power plant.
The power plant.
This Siemens solar panel on the Bimini is backed up by another 4 on deck, and the 5 of them produce more than enough energy for the somewhat power-hungry Jolly Swagman. The Ampere provides energy on days when it's cloudy or misty, but Jolly Swagman is one of the few boats I know that almost never has to use its engine to battery charge. Blue Waters cruisers ultimately spend something like 80% of their time on anchorage, and you want to be comfortable and happy with the space you've got to live in. Let me show you the changes I've made below in Bambola, the additions I've made, some of the equipment I've got, and then you'll be able to make up your own mind what you think is important. Welcome to my home, Bambola Cats. As I said before, she's an Angus Primrose design, Moody 36, built in 1979, and down below things are pretty well standard as any other Moody. 1 or 2 small additions I've made. Here in the galley, this is a saltwater pump, which is used for washing up and to a certain extent for cooking in order to save water, which is always an issue. This hand freshwater pump I tend to use in preference to the electric ones because it also just conserves water, which is an issue. The other cruising boat difference is that I find most of us have got a net hanging up with our fruit, our exotic fruits in there. The Galley Strap is also a blue water addition, not required in catamarans, but absolutely required in monohulls, and that clips on here and locks me in so that I can cook, wash up, work in the galley at sea with less risk of falling into the stove. The other non-standard item of equipment in the saloon are the lee cloths on both bunks, which fasten up whenever you're on passage at night so that who's ever sleeping can get a good comfortable night's sleep and be safe and secure and not too rocky and rolly. Oh, and I suppose the bungees are as well. Got to have something to stop the books falling out. Come have a look at this. Well, here's the rose from the black bag on deck, and it comes straight down fortuitously into the shower compartment, into the area of where the shower curtains are. This floor has a pump which pumps out the washing water, and excellent shower unit. This is the forecastle, absolutely bog standard with a V infill, used for guests and used for stowing things. I mean, the lockers are just crammed full of all sorts of things, and in harbour there's, it just becomes a sort of glory hole, and that's it. Behind this door, in the heads, it's a very good design, this boat, is the wash basin with the proper shower unit which runs off the main water system, which I avoid using because of fresh water problems. I try to keep it to the solar shower. The vacuum pump Lavac in the forward heads is very efficient, if somewhat hard work to operate. So, this is my stateroom, the after cabin. One of the joys of a centre cockpit boat is that you get wonderful accommodation and a bit of privacy and separation from crew or guests on board. As you can see, nice big bed, necessary in hot climates, lots of room for my books. These are my heads, my own private heads. Wash hand basin, shower. It's separate from the rest of the cruise accommodation or the guest accommodation, and really does help to improve the quality of cruising life. I think I'm lucky with this boat. So, this is the navigation area. I have a sort of array of instruments in front of me, probably about average for a cruising boat, more than some, less than others, maybe slightly above average, but that's about it. What I've got here in front of me is the second GPS, which is on a totally different circuit, and it has its own antenna and its own power feed, separate from the GPS which operates in the cockpit, which swings out like this, so that the watchkeeper can see the main GPS from behind the wheel. And I use that for plotting my position on the chart, which I do normally about every 4 hours or on a long passage at noon. Above that I have a NASA Navtex, and Navtex is, I think, one of the most underused facilities that we have. This NASA has many pages and just is constantly receiving information. Its power consumption is very low, and it tells me things like, for example, yesterday it told me that there were 6 containers about 100 miles to the west of the West Indies, and it gave me their latitude and longitude and the direction of their drift and so on. It also produces general weather forecasts, and it works all over the world, and there's no license fee, nothing. It's a superb piece of gear. Above the Navtex is this card, which is a marine radar detector, and the idea of it is that if a large ship is coming your way and pinging with its radar, the detector goes off and it indicates which direction, like this, that the lights or the radar signal is coming from. It works fine. The only problem is big ships don't run their radar all the time. I thought they did. I bought the piece of kit because I thought they did, and I now find out that they don't. So it's marginal. It's marginal. False sense of security, perhaps. My radar is a Raytheon Pathfinder Sl, and it is just excellent. Much smaller, tinier, much lower power consumption. I now can run it when I'm sailing, and the wind generator and the solar panel will more or less keep it up. Radar is something which I find you don't need most of the time, but when you do need it really badly. I've been in fog in the Mediterranean and used it. A few weeks after it was installed, I was coming down the ICW in thick fog, couldn't see the bows of the boat. Wonderful piece of kit, that. I also use it for navigation, and I use it at night to check out what's around me before I get my head down for a few minutes. Interestingly, on the radar you can clearly see, this is a crowded anchorage, and you can clearly see all the boats that are anchored all the way around me, and this is the edge of Anse Matin. This is a pier that has been destroyed by a hurricane. So with GPS and this radar, you could actually get into this anchorage at night fairly safely. And the other vitally important piece of kit is my Sterling Marine Power Monitor. I have a total of 5 batteries, and it monitors the amperage in each one of those batteries. It tells me what the voltage is in each battery, and it also tells me how much amperage the solar panel is putting in, the wind generator is putting in, the engine alternator is putting in, and importantly it tells me how much amperage is going out as well. The problem with the EPIRB is that because 95% of all alarms are false, in less wealthy areas search and rescue is unreliable. And this is my Icon ICM 710 single sideband radio, and after the GPS, I think it's the most important piece of kit that I've got. It keeps me in touch with all my friends. There are regular skeds, regular nets, which we all catch up with each other's news on, where we are, what we're doing, and so it has a great safety factor as well. My particular group of people use a frequency called 4417, which you, about an hour after sunup, wherever you are in the world, you tune into 4417 and you'll be chatting to other like-minded people, find out about anchorages, find out about reefs, find out about local problems, and just keep in touch. It's a wonderful piece of equipment. There are other more formal nets, which all over the world there are single sideband nets. There's the Pacific net, there's the Indian Ocean net, and so on. Its other function is that through a small modem like this, it downloads into my computer weatherfax information, so that I can get weatherfax charts on a daily basis, morning and night, for wherever I am in the world, and I can do my own weather forecasting from those charts. I guess an average budget is between £100 and £200 a week, and with that money you can afford to fly home occasionally, which we all need to do. You can make the phone calls, rent the cars, go and have a look at the islands, go and have a look at the places that you've sailed your boat to come and see. Why don't you come and join us?